Quran and do here, so they'll be able to help you out when you're going through the tutorial. Okay, so this is a bit small. I'm going to try to blow this up a little bit, so it actually takes up the whole resolution here. So you can look at the document. Basically, what you're going to need to do is actually get the stuff from GitHub. So I created a repository earlier today. You can find it here. So if you don't know how to use Git to clone or pull, well, you should. But it's understandable. You've only had a week to play around with some of this stuff, and you won't know how to do it. So if you go to GitHub, you go to the URL that's listed there in the document, in this document, right? This URL down here. It'll lead you to this page, I think. Yeah. And you can type this, click the button down here, right? Download this stuff as a zip file. And everyone knows how to deal with zip files, so that's not a problem. Okay? But if you don't, if you know how to do it otherwise, you can do this. You can copy the SSH URL and then clone it. So you can open a scary terminal window like I've done here. Okay, and you can just make some directory where you're going to do your stuff. Okay, and then copy it. And if you have Git installed correctly, you can just type this. Okay, Git clone, and then paste that URL, and then it'll get all the stuff down. Actually, I didn't finish doing everything in the directory, so the files that I have here are not exactly the same as ones I pushed up. So I'm going to resync that right now. Let me do that. Okay. So if you had already downloaded the zip file, you can throw away the zip file. If you've already cloned the URL, you can reclone it. So that's really easy. You can just say, if you cloned it, you will have a directory here called orbital bootstraps. There it is. So I'm going to go zap it away, remove it. Okay, and I'm just going to do that all over again. Okay, and then I'll have all the files wherever I want to store them. Okay, can you all read that? I hope it's clear. I'm going to try to work from the monitor over there, and the font size is really big because I'm pretty blind. I can't read this. Okay. Okay, anyways, here we are. And I want to tell you what Bootstrap is. So probably everyone's seen this style of websites that look pretty clean. In other words, they have some hovering component. When you hover over something, it sort of highlights. When you go to a form part, it sort of highlights too. So even in Firefox, it's mimicking that. You know, it's put a blue outline around it. And this is a really easy way to make a simple website that's very easily styled. And the most important thing about Bootstrap is not that it looks nice. It's that it looks nice on one of these. Okay, it looks nice on a phone or a tablet. So in the instructions here, I've told you what we're going to do, but I've given you some technical terminology. So the Bootstrap is one of the ways that people have tried to make web design responsive, meaning that it can be used for mobile clients like laptops, desktops, as well as desktops. So, so you have a desktop with a 30-inch display and lots of pixels at your disposal. Your website should look perfectly good as it does on a small display. And you can see that at work. So if you take a Bootstrap site, let's say, for example, this one, hopefully this is Bootstrap 2, and you shrink the size of the display, it will look still pretty okay. So you can see, like, for example, the menu has shrunk, right? It's gone. Where did it go? It went into this button, right? This is what you see on all the time, right? So you have a navigation menu that disappeared and got folded into a button, and things of that sort. So if you change the display up, boom, all of a sudden the button disappears. You have all the navigation widgets there, and then you can press these just as normal. Okay, so basically, previously, before Bootstrap and responsive web design came out, people had to make different versions of their website. Okay, they had to make one page for a mobile and one page for their desktop. And with responsive web design, people said, I'm not going to pay a consultant to do it twice for me. You know, I only want them to write one code base, one set of HTML pages, and I want both of these things to work on whatever type of information platform that I have. Okay, and so that's what Bootstrap is all about responsive web design. Okay, now last week we had Zahan talk about HTML5, right? So what's the difference between CSS and HTML? Can anyone tell me? Just give an approximate answer, it's okay. No one feels like talking? You guys are all in space, I can't hear you. You know, there's no sound in outer space, right? Okay, CSS stands for cascading style sheets, right? So what does that mean? It means style sheets, it means directives to tell us how to display things. Why is it called C? Why is it called cascading? Because the rules that you define in one place can cascade to another place in the style sheet. So you can say, I want headers to be big, but somewhere else you say, my header 4 should be red. So your header 4 will be big and red, for example. Okay, you don't have to say that it's big because you already said all headers are big. Okay? HTML is the markup, right? HTML stands for hypertext markup language, right? So it's a language that we use to make text look nice, you know, by putting in some directives that tell us logically what types of things are there. So for example, I have a header 1. Okay, that's a big header. But I don't tell you how to display it. I just say that this is logically some type of header. Okay, and the CSS directive says, you know what to do with those header things? Oh, make them big, red, and centered. Okay, that's the difference between HTML and CSS. Okay, so if you look at, let's say, a web page like this one here, okay, all of this is all HTML. This is what you learned to type last time. You can see there's nothing to tell you how it's supposed to look. Okay, it just tells you what those things are and what to do with them. It's not actually a lot of text here, right? It's mostly tags. Okay, so in CSS3, you can write directives that tell you how to use the rules to format that page. Okay, but the problem with CSS is the directive language. It's like a static sheet that says, oh, if you see this, then do this. If you see this, then do this. Okay, make it certain ways. And people who have used CSS for a long time, they decided, you know, it's not the way to go. We want to make CSS more programmatic. Okay, I know you guys all love programming, right? Yeah, after Python programming, it's not so terrible, right? But the whole idea is that you have variables in programs, right? And they can cascade and affect other things. Okay, so one of the other premises of Bootstrap is to use style sheets that are somehow more advanced than cascading style sheets. Okay, cascading style sheets, for example, doesn't have the notion of a variable, something that you can change and affect other parts of the style sheet. Okay, and so if you go back to this sheet here, you'll see that there's some talk about CSS. All right, so for example, less. This is the CSS processor that Bootstrap uses. Okay, so what I mean by that is you're programming actually a style sheet. You have variables in the style sheet, and you have to run a program, a language compiler. It's called less, that will change the less into CSS. Okay, so that's what they do in Bootstrap. Okay, you don't have to worry about it too much, but I'm giving you this information now so that you have some premise for understanding the documentation that's there when you go through it. Okay, now CSS can be a pretty big file. So I'll show you, for example, the Bootstrap file itself. For example, if you go to look at the actual code from Bootstrap. So if you have downloaded the zip file, and you go to the CSS directory, these are the CSS files, right? So let's take a look at this one. I'm going to open it up with Sublime Text. Okay, and here it is. This is all standard cascading style sheet language. Okay, So it has this syntax where there's something that's being defined, and then some attribute value pairs that define what. Right? So I think Zaan told us last time that when you're using the strong tag, you just mean it to be bold, right? So there's some translation between using the strong tag in CSS and then having it look bold on the screen. Okay, so this is a really long file. If you could look on the left-hand side, right-hand side here, you can see it's pretty long. So we can keep on scrolling pretty much forever until we get to the bottom of the file. And this is a pretty big file, right? And you can imagine if you're on a website and you're trying to fetch things, let's say from the US or from Pakistan or from, I don't know, Malta or some other country, the internet connection can be really slow. So even retrieving a file like this one, even though it's just the specification for how that website is supposed to look, it's going to take up bandwidth. It's going to take up time, okay? So we want to minimize that time. So another thing that they do is to minify it. Okay, what do we mean by minify? It has nothing to do with me, min. Okay, but in case you were wondering, all right. So, but it has to deal with shrinking it down. Okay, so this is the same style sheet. Okay, but it's actually just all the space has been chopped out of it. Okay, it doesn't look that different. It looks a little nicer when you put it into. Let's see. Can I drag it into the browser? Yeah. Okay. So this is the same style sheet. You can see there's no spaces. Right? They've taken out all the spaces, and they've changed some variable names to be shorter, just because we don't need the variables to be human readable. Okay. So this looks like junk text, but trust me, this tells you how to lay out the specifications of a web page in a very responsive manner. Right? Meaning it's good for the phone, it's good for the tablet, it's good for a desktop browser, okay? And it's good for my poor laptop, which has to also display all of this junk. Okay? So this is what I mean by minified, okay? So many times you'll hear about JavaScript or CSS. These are sort of like the helper files to understand our website. The CSS is just telling us how it looks, okay? We want to minimize that so it doesn't take a lot of times to transmit, okay? And the same of JS files. JS files are JavaScript files, okay? We're going to talk about jQuery next week, right? So that's the second half of this sort of like a companion tutorial about things that you can do to make your web page more dynamic, you know, animated in some ways, right? And some of those things are going to be things that we're going to do in Bootstrap today. Okay, so those go over some of the things that we're going to talk about today. Okay, so let's get into it. So let me close up some things here. Okay, so I'm going to go through the Bootstrap webpage so that you have some idea of what's going on. So you can go to this website on your browser, getbootstrap.com, or if you can't type that, you just type Bootstrap into Google, okay, and then follow the first link that you get, right, which is this one. Okay, so you're at this web page now, and basically it's a very easy thing to do. You just download the Bootstrap, okay, but we have it in the URL that you have been provided on GitHub, okay, and then you have it and you can start using it in your web project, okay. So I'll show you what that means, okay. Now, Bootstrap is both a CSS library as well as some jQuery plugins to make the web page more dynamic, okay. So we're going to go talk about the CSS first, all right? So basically, Zaan mentioned some of the things that I'm going to go over again, right? So basically, with with Bootstrap, the idea is that you have a simple web page and you invoke certain things that come as part of the CSS. Okay, so let's see. One of the things that you'll see, let's see whether I can get this to work. Okay. I'm going to have to reload this. Okay, I shrunk the font a little bit. But one of the things that it does is you can see on the right-hand side, right, over here, as I scroll, this thing is being updated automatically. So it's sort of like a table of contents. That's pretty cool, right? So I can jump to any part of this and jump to that, and the left side updates. The right side stays static. It's always there, right? Okay. So there's two things going on. One is the CSS to make the page look nice, have the fonts that it does, and the JavaScript, the jQuery plugins that allow this type of menu to take place, okay, that allow us to inspect where we are on the web page and update the navigation menu on the right-hand side. And similarly, when I click on the right-hand side, jump to the part of the web page on the left-hand side. Okay, so that's one of the things that Bootstrap allows you to do. We're going to do some of this, okay? And another part that a lot of people know how to use is, for example, a carousel effect. So this is a carousel, right? So you can go first slide, second slide, third slide, etc. And you can build this in Bootstrap very easily. You just provide some images, you cut and paste some code, basically plagiarize the code, right? Change some things, and then ta-da, you have a nice looking carousel that slides automatically when you're not looking at it, and then responds to button presses when you're hovering over it. Okay? So those are the types of things that we're going to do. Okay, so we're going to go back to the top. Okay? So cascading style sheets. I said that Bootstrap has two components, right? So there are quite a number of things that Bootstrap makes for you. Okay, the first thing is the grid system. All right, what Bootstrap does is it lays out all of the contents on the page in 12 columns. Okay, so you look at this particular web page, it doesn't look like 12 columns, but basically they've lumped 3 columns into one set on the right-hand side and 9 columns together on the left-hand side. Okay, so it looks like there's 1/4 of the page that's separate, right? And 3/4 of the page that's on one side. So you could make it much more narrow than that, but that's basically the same idea. Okay, so here you can see, for example, I have 12 columns, right? I can also section it into one column that's four units long and 8 columns. One column that's 8 units long. That's exactly what you see on this page, right over here. This is one set, and this is another set. Okay, and to do this, as Zahan mentioned last time, you're going to be using the div tag, the division tag in HTML5. Okay, and so basically, when you want to create this type of layout, we're going to use something like a table. Okay, the table layout. Okay, I have to blow it up so you can see the menu disappeared. Okay, it's going to look like this. All right, there's a tag called row that's going to encompass everything that you want on the same row. Okay, we're going to close that later on, and then in the middle we're going to have divisions for each thing that we want on each column. Okay, so if we wanted something like this particular page that we were looking at, we would have a div class row, then a div class of column 8, and a div class of a column 4, and then a close. Okay, that's what it would look like. All right, and you can see what happens when your display gets too small. So I've made the font size really big on this monitor. So all of the columns have collapsed. All right, they're all stacked on top of each other now. Right, but if I shrink the font a bit, then you can see they are starting to pop out. Right, then I have the 8 column and the 4 column next to each other, and all the 1 columns are next to each other again. Okay, this is how we are able to lay things out on a mobile phone. Right, you just take all of those columns and just stack them on top of each other. And if you turn it to landscape, sometimes they'll expand out, right? And then you can see the 2 columns. So you don't have to worry about that now. You just use the column format in Bootstrap, and it'll try its best to rearrange things properly for you. Okay? Okay, so there are other things that we can do. It's probably better to actually try it out, but I encourage you to keep this tab open as we go through the exercises so that you can find out what works and what doesn't work. Okay, and I think all of us will be circulating around to help you figure out what's going on. Okay. All right. So I'm going to finish going through the rest of the Bootstrap site for a short while. And I'm going to try to expand outwards here, and then just quickly go over what types of things there are. Okay. So there's all of these things about the grid system. One thing is about media queries. I don't think you may know what these are. Okay. But media queries is the way a browser, the way a web page asks your browser what type of device you're on. Okay. So actually, this was invented a long time ago. When, for example, you're looking at a website, you filled out a form, okay, and you press the submit button, and then you see a web page that says, "Thank you for ordering, blah blah blah. Would you like to print this file?" Right? And then what will happen is you might press a button to print, right? And then what will happen is that a new web page will come up, but it'll be rendered slightly differently from the original web page, such that it's easy for it to print. Okay? So sometimes you want to create a web page that's going to be printed, and sometimes you want to create a web page that's for interactivity. Okay? The way that web designers got around this is to introduce the idea of a media query. You can ask the browser, is this page meant to be printed? Is this page meant to be displayed and interacted with? Okay? And people have used that idea to now ask for, you know, am I on a phone? Okay? Am I now on an Android device or other things like that? Okay? Am I in landscape mode or in portrait mode? All of those things come as a result of the media query. Okay? There's also one very interesting, tricky thing that happened, okay, with displays on phones. Okay? And that has to do with a very special phone that many of you have. Okay? I don't have one, but you guys may have one. Okay, so when the iPhone first came out, right, when you had a Retina display iPhone, okay, people started to look at their web pages on the Retina phone. Okay, what happened? Now, you know about the Retina phone, right? Does anyone know what the important thing about the Retina display is? High DPI, right? It has a very high resolution. Okay, so all of the text looks really good because all the things are anti-aliased very nicely. Okay, but a lot of the images that you see that are on web pages, they are a certain size. You know, they're X pixels by Y pixels, right? So what happens when you go view a web page on a Retina iPhone? Okay, all of those nice images suddenly get that much smaller, 50% smaller. Okay, so that was a problem. So they had to introduce part of, in media queries, another tag called the viewport that allows, for example, a web page to serve two different types of pictures. One at a normal resolution for the rest of us, okay, and one at double resolution for people with Retina displays, okay, so that those images can be more crisp, okay, to be the same as the text, okay. So you don't have to deal with this for the most part in your projects, okay? But if you want to cater to Retina devices, there are a little bit more tricks that you have to play with when you serve up images, just so that you remember, okay? Okay, so typography is, of course, how the text looks like. You have the standard H1 through H6 headers here, okay? You can have body copy, which is the normal text that you see. You can have lead body text. You can add a paragraph having a particular style, the lead class, to make it look a little bit more interesting, right? So instead of having a normal P class, you could type P class and then add the lead as part of the class to have it stand out more, okay? So again, when I'm telling you all of these you can do yourself using CSS, right? But why use CSS to style it when you can use semantics to style it, right? Meaning you just add the class tag, okay, and then you get this formatting for free. If you want to change the formatting, you change the CSS within Bootstrap to do that, okay? Okay, there are lots of other things that it does. For example, abbreviations. So for example here, if I hover over that, it will tell you, give you a tooltip that says that's an abbreviation. You can do that for initializations too, initialisms, right? Which basically takes this word, I don't know whether you can see it, it's pretty tiny, and makes it into small caps, okay, to make it a little nice, better formatted. Okay. You can do block quotes. In block quotes, they look a little bit like this. It has a little gray bar here and then a quotation. You can give it a source if you want. So you can add a site block, and then it will come out like this, right? Someone famous in source title, and this is the actual HTML that you would write to do that. Okay? Right? You have unordered lists and everything of that sort. You can insert code blocks, okay, that will come out exactly looking like what you see here, right? Code blocks, just like that, right? So this is what you would write. You use the pre tag for that. You just type pre and then your text, and then it'll come out looking like that. Okay? All right, so there are lots of things that you can do, but it's more fun to play with an example, right? So that's exactly what we're going to do now. Okay? So we're going to take an example page from the Bootstrap website. I'm going to go back to the top. Okay, go to Getting Started. Okay, and then you can download one of these basic templates. We're gonna start with the Jumbotron. Okay. Okay. So you click on that. Oh, it brings you to a web page. What do I do with it? Well, you save it. Okay. So I'm gonna save this file. Okay. I'm gonna put it on my desktop. Oh. Okay. I'm gonna actually put it in the place where I download. Okay. Okay, so here's the file. If I click on it, right, and you open it up in your browser, it looks like this. This doesn't look anything like that page that you just clicked on, right, before, right? It's supposed to look like this, right? It obviously doesn't. It looks pretty ugly, right? All right, so we're going to try to connect this up so it works correctly. Okay, so what we're going to do is inspect what this page actually looks like. So I'm going to open it up in Sublime Text. Okay. Okay, and this is the file that you're looking at. So we want to understand what this thing means. Okay, so you probably already know that there's a head, right? The head of the file. This is all the data that is not part of the page. It just tells us about the page, but it's actually really important. So we're going to look through that. Okay, so some of the things are important for us. This is the one line that really makes it about responsive design. Okay, so all of your websites should try to include this. Okay, meta name equals viewport, content width equals device width, initial scale equals 1. Okay, I'm not going to go over what that means, but basically this means that this page is somehow responsive. It knows how to shuffle between different resolutions well. Okay, there's a title here. We can go ahead and change that if we want. Okay, so maybe I'll change it to Bootstrap example orbital. Okay, and the very important thing here is the CSS core. Okay, these two lines here, right? The first one is a comment. The second line is trying to find the Bootstrap minified CSS file, right? That file that I showed you earlier. That's just all text, right? No breaks of any sort. Okay, but it's not located at this path. Okay, it's located somewhere else. All right. Now, if you downloaded the docs that I gave you earlier through GitHub or from a zip file, you just need to connect it to there. Okay. So, for example, if I save the file that I downloaded into this directory, orbital, okay, then you can see I have a CSS file here, folder here, right? And that has all of these files. Here's that file that I was looking for, bootstrap.min.css. Okay, so I need to provide a path to this file, right? So all I'm going to do is then change the path here, okay, to that. Okay, so I'm going to say, well, looks like it's supposed to be here. Okay, it's under the CSS directory. Okay, so I'm going to reload. That looks pretty good now, right? Everything snapped back in. So you guys can all try this, okay, on your laptop and make sure that you can get the original file to come out correctly. Okay, go ahead and try it. Okay. So another thing that you'll notice that there's the body of the text. So this is the one line that we really tried to change here, right? To change the location of the file so that you can find it. Okay. If you find that it doesn't work, you can, for example, go to your broken page. Let's break it again. Okay, let's go back and break it. Okay. Break the page, all right? And then you can type, find the source of your HTML file. This is the file that you downloaded, right? And then usually you can click on the links that are in here. So for example, here's the Bootstrap core CSS file, right? So I'm going to click on that link, and it says, well, I can't find that file, right? So you just have to make sure that this eventually resolves to the right file, okay? Which we did, right? We just removed all of this stuff here, okay? And then we saved it, and we reloaded, and then we got what we wanted. Okay? Good so far? Anyone lost? Okay. Go ahead and play with the page. For example, there's a project name there, right? So maybe I want to change the project name. So I'm going to go down. Oh, here it is. It's in a tag that has the class navigation bar brand. So I can change it to the name of my team, and, you know, Team Orbital. Okay, and I can change, let's say, some of the stuff here. Like there's an H1 here that says "Hello World," right? I'm going to say something more meaningful for us: Orbital Mission Control Bootstrap. Okay, and some text here, right? So I can add some more text if I want, or I could leave it there, right? And I'm going to just put some more text here. Okay, so I'm customizing the page. I'm putting whatever I want here. Okay, so that's just a single page, but hopefully you can follow that pretty easily. And we're going to do a couple more advanced examples, since we have about 30 minutes left before it's time for you guys to just do things on your own. Okay, anybody have questions so far? No questions? Yeah, sir? Okay. All right. If you have a working one, that means that your Bootstrap is in the right place. Okay. Your CSS files are in the right place. So if you've downloaded it, if your URL starts with the word file, okay, that means it's taken from your local laptop. If your address still says HTTP something, that means you're taking from the website where it's pointed at. Okay. So file always means that you're looking at the local file on this computer. Okay. So this particular file is located in this path, right? If you're on a Windows computer, it'll say something like C drive / blah 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 blah. Right. So if you downloaded it in the right place, perhaps it just works. That's good. Okay, I forgot to tell you something that's somewhat important. So in the distribution that you downloaded from GitHub, okay, there's basically a couple files, okay, and I'm going to show you them in here because I bothered to write a README, okay. So basically there are two directories. There's one called one_before. Those are the raw files that I'm providing you as exercise. Okay, and then there are finished files in something called toAfter. Those are what the files should look like when they're finished, although I really haven't finished all of them, and I hope you will have a chance to do that. Okay, now when you download Bootstrap, okay, for example, you go to Bootstrap, okay, and you download it. Okay, it'll tell you what comes with the download, right? So it's going to construct something like this. It'll construct a directory, and then all of these files will be inside. The CSS files, the JavaScript files, and the font files. Okay? So the CSS files are located in CSS, right? There's the regular Bootstrap CSS, which is human readable. There are spaces. And then there's the minified version, which we are using because we want to save on bandwidth. That's smaller. Right? And then there's some themes that you can incorporate if you want. Okay? On the other side, you need to use Bootstrap JS. Okay, there's a minified version of that there too that contains several plugins that will help work, Bootstrap work. Okay. So another thing that you may have noticed that in this Jumbotron example that we're doing, okay, so if you scroll all the way to the bottom, right, there are a couple lines that are sort of interesting, okay, all the way at the bottom. What are these? These are the lines that specify the JavaScript, okay, that's going to make the page dynamic. If we had any dynamic contents on the page, we don't have any here, okay. But what is very important to remember is that we load these lines last, okay. You can think when you request a web page from a server, what does it do? It sends you the web page parts at a time, right? And it will finish with the bottom part of the page, last part of the page. Okay, so we want to actually load all the content of the page first and display it. Okay, before we want to make the page interactive. Okay, why is that? Because if we make the page interactive, maybe things haven't finished loading yet, and then everything will be a mess. Okay, so we want to make sure everything's loaded before you do any action. Just like if you're loading a game or something, you'll have some preloader, right? You have to wait 5 minutes for your really, really slow mobile connection to load this gigantic game that you've downloaded, right? So it's the same for a web page. You want to only allow interactivity after everything is loaded in. Okay, so that's why you see all of these lines. These are very important lines that happen at the very end of the file. Okay, so there's a couple things here that I also want you to note. One is that there's this line here that refers to a file that's not even on our machine. Okay, and that file is this file called jquery.min. Okay, jQuery is again a library that we're going to talk about next week in Mission Control that allows a lot of interesting dynamic effects. Okay, of which we're only covering a very few uses that are just within Bootstrap. Okay. Now you can include the jQuery library. You can download it, put it on your website, and serve it from your website. But it makes sense to download it or refer to a central version of jQuery. Okay. Why is that? Can anyone tell me why it makes sense to refer to a central version, like for example the one that googleapis.com is hosting? No one sure? It's okay, right? It has to do with speed, okay? It's not that your website that's in SOC or on your laptop is slow, okay? It's that, for example, googleapi.com, okay? It has this copy of Bootstrap, and many, many, many websites refer to this copy, okay? Now, what does that mean? It means if you visited another website that happens to use this exact same URL to refer to this library, chances are your web browser already has it in its computer. Okay? It has it in this cache, meaning that it's already local on your computer. And your computer knows that it has it. Okay? So when you refer to this particular URL, then the system will check, your web browser will check, do I know about this file? Oh yeah, I already downloaded it 20 minutes ago when I was looking at Wikipedia. All right, so I don't have to download it again. All right, but if you refer to a local version of this, let's say you decided to download jQuery yourself and serve it from your directory, which is just fine. Okay, then all of a sudden the web browser is like, oh, it's asking for this file. Do I know about this file? No, I have to go fetch it. Okay, then I have to go to the server and fetch that file, and I incur a little bit more delay. Okay, so this is the reason why both minifying and referring to a central version of CSS or JavaScript is the standard way that people do it on the web. Okay? It also means that when Bootstrap updates or jQuery updates, you're automatically getting the right version. Okay? Which is both good and bad. For example, if there's some new functionality that breaks some old functionality that you were relying on, then you're sunk. Make sure it's working properly. Okay. So enough about that. Let's do some web pages together. Let's have some more visual fun. Okay. So Bootstrap has this very generic style to it, which is very clean, but sometimes you might want to change what you want things to look like, and there are lots of websites out there to help you, but Bootstrap itself has some things that you can choose, okay? So you can say what you want in your Bootstrap to download, okay? Most of the time, you won't be fiddling with this page at all. The only thing that you might want to consider is changing how it looks. So there's all these colors here that you can change. Okay, you can say, I want the green that deals with the successor of a form submission to be changed to a different color, or I want the background color not to be white, I want it to be, I don't know, yellow or something, or red. Okay, then I could change it to red, for example. Okay, so these are hex color codes. I'll post another post about this if you're not sure what that means. I can change the fonts. Okay, you can change that all here, and then download it. Okay, so their website will go compile this into a nice minified version that has all the customizations that you've made. Okay, now chances are most of us don't like to get that nitty-gritty. You would rather have a theme, right? Just choose a theme and then use that to customize your website, because you don't want it looking like everyone else's website, right? You know. So you can do that. One site that we're going to use today is called Bootswatch. Okay. There are other sites that are out there on the web that you can use. These happen to be free. I know students like free. Okay. Web designers like free too. Okay. So this is very intuitive. What you do is you choose a theme, right? And it will change the site to look like that, right? So now this is Bootstrap, but they changed the fonts, they changed the colors a little bit. This is how your nav bars are going to look like. These are how your buttons are going to look like. This is what your text is going to look like. Okay, maybe I want it to be something more clean. Okay, so this looks a little bit Swiss. Okay, so you can imagine you're in Switzerland and you have lots of red buttons everywhere. This is what you could choose. You want something like that. It has this really nice light type, which is very readable and nice if you're under 65, right? If you're over that, you probably can't read this at all. Okay, and you can choose something. If you're trying to make something readable, you could use this fairly ugly theme, but at least it's very legible, right? Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to use one of these just for fun. We're going to choose the Space Lab theme. This looks a little bit like the NUS. The colors for NUS, so that's why I've chosen it. Okay, and so what I want you to do is download this style. Let's see, where is the thing for that? There's a download thing somewhere here. Oh, yeah, right there. Duh. Okay, so okay, there are two links here: bootstrap.min.css. Bootstrap.min. Okay, if you click the bootstrap.min, you'll download it, right? This is the same terribly verbose and compact minified version of the CSS. It only has a couple parts that are different that changes the style and the color. Okay, and we can save this page. Okay, if you don't want to save it, you actually have it in the distribution already. It's over here in Space Labs. Okay, there's the Bootstrap minified version, and we're going to just change our Jumbotron that we had earlier, our example, right, which we corrected. Okay, and I'm going to just change that to use the template that I'm going to use. Right, so instead of using the CSS Bootstrap, I'm going to use the one that I downloaded in Space Lab. Okay, so I just changed one word, save, go back to the browser, reload. Okay, slightly different, right? Change your fonts, change your colors. Okay. So that's all I do. I'm just plugging in a new CSS file that has a new set of definitions for how the page should look. Okay? All right. So now we talked about how to change a web page in terms of CSS. Now for the next 15 minutes or so, we're going to actually do something with this very, very, very important and very good homepage that we all use and love, right? It's called the NUS School of Computing web page, right? You've all used this page before, right? Let me ask you a question. Is this web page responsive? Does it look good on one of these things? I don't know. I've never looked at the SOC web page on one of these, right? Try it. Does it work? It doesn't look right at all. Let's try this experiment, all right? Okay. I'm gonna shrink, 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 shrink. Ah, yes. If I had an iPhone 4, this is what I would see if I loaded the NUS School Computing homepage. Wow, I can't see anything. And worse, I have to scroll to the right, which is very, very bad. You know, you don't want to have horizontal scrolling, right? And you want to you scroll up and down. I can't see anything. What happened to all those other things that were supposed to go on, right? So we don't want it to look like that. That's pretty terrible, right? Because if you went to a web page and it looked like this, you would probably think, you know, I'm not going to that university. They're just terrible, right? So what I want to do is I'm going to fix that, right? We don't want it to look like this. We want it to look like something responsive. We want it to look a little bit more like this page, okay? Which is the one we're going to build, okay? It's not quite correct. I haven't finished it, but at least it's responsive. I have all the navigation links here, and the things collapse somewhat well, so I can see things like this, okay? So that's what we're going to do now, all right? So in your one_before, you have a page that's about.html. Let's go open that up. Okay, so this is the text of what's on the about.html page at SOC. Okay, and we're going to make this into a Twitter Bootstrap page. Okay, that's not actually very hard. Okay, so if we go back to the Twitter Bootstrap page, where is it anyways? I lost my thing. Well, we'll go back to it anyways. Bootstrap. Okay, we'll go to getting started. Right? And then you'll see the basic template, right? This says start with this basic HTML or modify these examples. So we're going to start with this. Copy the HTML below to begin working with a minimal Bootstrap document. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to copy all of this stuff. Okay, go to my subline text, dump it in. Okay, save. Okay, and then I'm going to take all this text and stick it somewhere in this page, right? So I have all this stuff here. I'm going to highlight it, and I'm going to dump it in the body part, right? Because after all, the head is not important to us, right? What's important is the body, right? That's where we store everything. So I'm just cut and paste. Okay, I'm going to take out my hello world, H1, and I'm going to take my about us and make that into a H1, right? So if you know how to do this on a Mac, something like Control-Shift-W, then you get the P tags. I think Zihan showed this last time. Okay, I'm just going to change it to an H1. Okay, I can highlight all of this line, do the same thing, Control-Shift-W. Okay, do this one, Control-Shift, oops, Control-Shift-W, Control-Shift-W. Or you can do it, you know, manually like this, right? Put in the key tags here. Okay. Okay, and I'm done, right? So what I can do is try to open this page that I've just done in Firefox. And ta-da, we have a page. It's not quite right styled, so we're going to go fix that. All right, we're going to go back up to the top. Okay, and see, okay, it said Bootstrap is in the wrong location. Okay, it's here. One down. Okay, and I'm going to reload. And that's what a Bootstrap page looks like, right? Now it looks pretty ugly again, right? Because you see that everything is flush to the left and flush to the right of the browser, right? We need to add some containers to give us margins of the page and things of that sort. So we're going to do that in the next step. Okay? Everyone okay with this step? Right? You getting somewhere with it? Okay. Don't worry. In the next hour, we'll go around again. I'm just going to go through the tutorial and then see how far we get with the rest of this. Okay. So this is a standard web page for Bootstrap. It doesn't look very good. So we're going to do something more with the rest of the examples that we have. Okay. So the next one we are going to try is the index.html. Okay. So this is the actual homepage of our school. Okay. If we go here, all right, this is what it's supposed to look like. Right. We're not going to get all of this. For example, I've not provided all of the images and everything. But what we want to do is pick out the most important thing, which is the navigation bar. Okay. And there's a side navigation bar here. Okay. Which we want to emulate. Okay. And what we want it to look like is a little bit like the one that I showed you. Okay. Like this one here. Okay. That has that nice fixed navigation on the left side in this case. Okay. So you can jump to the second header or the first header. Okay. And that thing will stick there. And we have this fixed navigation bar at the top too. Okay. So that when we scroll down on a page, we don't just lose that navigation, which happens a lot, for example, in some of our web pages. Let's see where you can find a big web page. The undergraduate pages are always very big. We can choose one of those. I don't even know which one to pick. Okay, so you can see this is not a very useful navigation bar because as you scroll down, you no longer see it anymore, right? By having a fixed nav bar, you have this nice effect where you don't have to worry about it being lost, right? It just stays there. Okay, so we're going to build this page together. Okay, so we're going to close the about. And we're going to open up the index.html in the before part. And then hopefully modify it so it looks a little bit like the after part. Okay? So this is just a bunch of links, right? So here on the left-hand side, the top part, this is our fixed nav bar that we are going to put at the top. And the one down here, right, is the side nav bar. And we're not going to necessarily do all of this. And here's, let's say, the footer. Okay. So to work with this, we're going to work with the example that's in Bootstrap. Okay. To deal with navigation to the example. All right. There's one here that says fixed nav bar. Okay. Super basic template with a fixed top bar with some additional content. Right. So we're going to do that. Okay. So I'm going to click on that. Okay, I have the file. Okay, I copied the file. So because I downloaded it, so I'm just going to look at the source of this page. I'll copy it. Okay, and then dump it into Sublime Text again. You can go up to the top and then paste what I just copied. Right? Okay. So this is the page. Okay, I'm going to take all this stuff and that I have from the original page and maybe just stick it in the main part of the page for now. Okay, and we're going to look at this page in our browser. Okay, and you can see again it doesn't look formatted correctly because I haven't styled it right. I've copied the page, but I haven't changed the path to point correctly. So I have to go up and do that. So let's do that. So here again, I have to change the example to point to the right place. In this case, the files are in not in one before, but down and then up into CSS. So this is the right direction. Okay. We also have to do the same for all the things for the JavaScript. Okay. The JavaScript is going to let our pages work correctly to fix the navigation bar in the right place. Okay. So we're going to do that too. Okay, we're going to reload, and now we have something that looks a little bit like the original page that we had downloaded from there, right? Okay. So now we're going to update it so that we can have some of these things. So we're going to start with the fixed nav bar. Okay. and do that one together. Okay, so here's the nav bar that is in Twitter Bootstrap. Okay, that's responsible for that thing at the top, right? So you can see here it has a drop down, it has a nav header that looks nice, it's grayed out, and then there are other links here. So we're going to just replace these with the things that I got from our school, right? So we go to the part that says fixed nav bar up here, and then we're looking through this code to find out what's going on, okay? So let's walk you through it. There's this button here, okay? So what is this button referring to? Okay? It refers to nothing that you can see at the desktop resolution, okay? Because it's not shown because you're at a high resolution. It actually refers to this button that only comes up when it's nice and small, okay? But you're treating it in the HTML, and only if the screen is small enough does that piece of HTML show up, okay? So for example, if you say, oh, I don't want 3 icon bars, I like 2, okay, I can remove that, and I refresh the page, and then it will change. You have just 2, right? So it's a little thinner now, okay? Something like that, okay? If I am on an iPhone 7, right, and I have tons of space, right, I might make, I don't know, lots of spans, right? Right, then I have a big button like that, okay, which would do the same thing. Okay, all right. So let's get that out. So the ones that you do see when it's at high resolution are all of these things over here: home, about, contact, drop down. We're going to replace some of these with things, right? So for example, I could say take the project name and change it to NUSSOC. I could take home and keep it as home, I think, because we have a home link. Yes, we do. Then we have an about SOC link, so we're going to change this one to about SOC. Okay, so on and so forth. Okay, so basically what's happening is you're using one division for the header, navbar header. This is what's shown when you shrink the page to a small size, right? So when you shrink it to a small size, only the navbar header is shown, which is the brand plus the button, okay? But when it's larger, you're not going to show that. You're going to show the other parts, right? Which is what you can see here, right? Okay, and how this is written as an unordered list, okay, a UL, which has the class navigation. In HTML5, that means that browsers that understand that something is tagged as navigation is supposed to be something that you can use for navigation as opposed to other types of text. Okay, and then you have list elements, right? These are the same things that you use to make a list, right? Either a bulleted list or a numbered list. Okay, there's one class for things that are active. Okay, only one thing can be active at a time, so you only use this tag for things that are active. So right now we're on the home page, so it should be active as blue, right? That's what we want it to look like. So we're going to put that as active there. Okay, so let's see. Let me close that one. Okay, and so we're going to save this and reload it, and you can see I have SOC, about SOC, etc. Okay, and we can go through some of the rest of this to make it work. Okay? So you just want to substitute things in here and get it to work. All right, so I'm not going to go through all of these steps. I encourage you to work through the example and try to make this page look a little bit more like the page that I showed you at the end, right? The one that has all of it finished, right? This one. Okay. So you have a jumbotron, and then you have another left-hand navigation that's static, okay? That doesn't move. Okay. So we're coming to the end of this tutorial. I wanted to go over 2 other things. Okay, one is to get some experience with the grid system. So in the undergraduate page, you go to the undergraduate page, which both Wee Sun and I represent. We have this page, okay, that has 2 columns in addition to the nav bar. Okay, so earlier we talked about the grid system, right? The grid system is I have 12 columns, and I can break things up into components of 12. So, for example, I might say this space over here with the navigation bar on the left-hand side, that's going to be 3 units out of 12. Okay, so 1/4 of the page. And these two parts I might make equal size. It's not actually equal size, equal size. And so I might use, let's say, 4 columns and 4 columns. Okay, so we can do that. And we can do that just by playing with the rows. So for example, after I finish this page, okay, I can just copy this, okay, save it as another page. Let's say I save it as undergraduate HTML, okay, and then I can use that. I'm not going to actually save it as undergraduate because I'll be writing over the source file that I want to use. So I'll save it as undergraduate, okay, and I'm going to open up the actual undergraduate file, which has the text that I'm going to use. Okay, I'm going to copy all of that, okay, and then put it in here, and then try to fix up the bottom part so it works better. Okay, so I want to make this text look right in this undergrad HTML. So I'm going to go look at that in my browser. Okay, and you can see all the text is here, but it's certainly not styled correctly, right? So I want to style it correctly. I'm going to use the grid system to do that. Okay, so how does it work? Well, in Bootstrap, the outermost thing that you create is a container. Okay, that's the container for your entire web page. And then within that, you have the grid. Okay, so the grid, what I'm going to do is going to make one row. Okay, that row is going to be for all 12 columns, and I'm going to make 3 divisions. Okay, 1 division for my side buttons, 1 division for the first column, and 1 division for the second column. Okay, so I'm going to try to do that. I have a one big jumbotron here that spans the whole width, and then within that I'm going to make 3 divisions. Okay, and I'm going to copy this 3 times. Okay, and then I need to give them class names, right? I'm going to have to say that this one is 3 units long, 3 units wide. Okay, so I'm going to do that by looking at the Bootstrap documentation. Okay, go back to the CSS. Okay, and then go down to the grid system. Okay, and then think about what types of things I need to use here, right? So they have all this technical stuff, but basically you just want to try to copy some of these until it starts working, right? So here, there's a div class row. Okay, so I'm going to make a div class row. Okay, and within that, I'm going to put the 3 divisions that I just talked about. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay, I'm going to re-indent just because it looks pretty messy. Re-indent. Okay, and then class column medium 8. So I'm going to column medium 4 and 4, for example. Okay, and I'm going to get 3 columns out of that. Let's see whether that works well. I'm going to put one of these into the first column. I'm going to put another one of these in the second column. Okay, and I'm going to put my side navigation bar on my third column, which is actually the one on the leftmost side. Okay, okay, save that, and then see whether that works. Okay, so I have now 3 columns, okay, and I need to fix them up so that they look a little bit nicer, right? So for example, I can say, oh, this undergraduate studies, that should be some type of header. So let me go highlight that and make that H2. This is all one paragraph. Okay, events and announcements is also something that should be in H2. H2. Okay, I have a course briefing. That was the title of this thing, so let's make it an H3. H3. Some information, let's make that into a block quote. and divide the line. Okay, then I have another event, which is a h3, and another one that's a description. I'm going to make that into a block code as well. Okay, save, and it's starting to look a little better, right? I've added some of the markup in the CSS to make it look a little bit nice. And I need to fix this part so that I have the navigation, right? Okay. So sometimes when you're not sure about how to do certain things in Bootstrap, for example, most of Bootstrap is about having a top navigation bar that runs sideways, right? So in SOC, for whatever reason, when we created this web page, we have both a top and a side nav, which makes it extremely confusing from a usability point of view. Usually people don't do that, okay, because you don't know whether you're supposed to look at the side or the top. So you just keep it in one place, all right? So if we want to try to mirror this, you can use our old friend Google, right? So you can type in Bootstrap, I want something side, nav, you know, and have it fixed. And the keyword there is affixed, okay? So, okay, how do I get it for the side? Using Bootstraps have side nav bar, okay? And then you can look at some of these posts that you'll see on the internet, and you'll be doing this a lot through the summer. This will become your favorite website, okay? That and Quora, I think those are the two sites that people use the most, okay? Are Stack Overflow and Quora to answer programming questions and get code snippets that you can use. Okay, so you can try some of these things out to do that. I've put a link in the documentation to say what thing that you can use. So there's one over here that tells you how to make this sticky nav bar. Okay, so I want to create a sticky side nav bar on the left side of my website. I'm using Bootstrap 3, which is what we're using today. I don't know how to create it. Well, either do I, but I'm going to copy from you. Okay. So how do you do that? Well, you need to define fix. So you have to add some CSS for this. There's a working example of how that works, right? So there's a lot of other people who've said something, wow, this one looks so complicated. I'm not going to do that, okay? So maybe I'll just try some of the examples that they have here, right? And then see whether I can get that to work. So some of these, you know, there are lots of really helpful people on the web. They'll just answer your question and they'll provide working code. How nice is that? It's like going to, you know, your lecturer and saying, okay, I've got a homework assignment. I don't know how to do it. And then somebody just, you know, comes up, here's the homework assignment. I've already coded it for you. I've already documented it for you. Just go ahead and run it. You know, that's exactly what it's like. So there are a lot of people out there doing exactly that, not for your homework assignments in class, right? But for web projects that you should be doing, okay? So go ahead, use those utilities. There are lots of these things, right? So this is, there are a lot of sites like this where they have the code that you can have all the CSS and the JavaScript files in separate windows like this. Okay? And you can just type the run button, and then it will start running correctly. So you can see, for example, this one has a sidebar, and if you scroll down, the sidebar stays there, right? So they've given you all the code, right? It's all here. So you could just conceivably just do Control-A, Control-C, and then Control-V it into your window, and just play with it until it works, right? That's all. Okay. So the final thing that I'm going to do with you in the next 5 minutes is deal with one last thing, which is quite fun to deal with, which I think probably Karan is going to cover a little bit more next week, is a carousel, right? So everyone knows these carousels, right? You put a couple images and you want it to look nice like that. So that's really easy to do in Bootstrap too. Basically, you have the code right here. You're just going to copy that, okay? And then dump it into your code and have it work. And let's take a look at what this code does. Okay, so this says I have a division, right? It's a carousel, okay? And then I have some specific information wrapped in an ordered list. That's what OL means, right? So for example, what this is going to be is this slider down here. You see this thing at the bottom? This is our ordered list. Okay. So if I type it, it goes to slide 1. If I click on this, it goes to slide 0. Okay. So it just says slide it to 0, slide it to 1, slide it to 2. Okay. And then I have the wrapper for the actual slides, right? So these slides are going to be images, right? They're the image tag that's at work. So I have to provide an image in the source tag, okay? And then I have to provide whatever else I want to include in here. For example, a caption for that image. Then I can put that here, okay? And then finally, I have the controls. These are the class controls that you see. If your fonts are working correctly, then you'll see this left hand and the left and right hand carrots, right, which you can press to have it go on its own, according to your command, right? If you're not on the carousel, it'll just move by itself, right, every periodic time. Okay, and that's enabled by the the jQuery plugin. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. We're going to open up a final page that we're going to use today. Okay, that's the entrepreneurship. Okay, so this is what this page looks like. You can see, for example, in this web page, the and sign is highlighted in red. That's because and is a reserved character in HTML, so you have to actually type it as ampersand. Okay, because the and sign starts what they call an entity. So specific characters like copyright signs, trademark signs, etc. They're all entities. They're not normal words. So you have a way of writing them out. So if you type AMP and then colon, this will turn into an and sign. If you type TM, then it'll be a trademark. Okay, there are lots of escapes that we can use in HTML to come up with to use other fonts. Okay. So I'm just gonna copy and paste that. Okay, and I'm going to take, let's say, the other parts of the page that we had earlier. Okay, and the earlier parts of the page that we had earlier, I'm just going to copy them into my page. Okay, and let's see whether that worked. Okay. A carousel here, it doesn't show up very well, right? Because there's no images there yet. So I had to just fill it in with some images, and then we're pretty much done with our tutorial. Okay, let's do that. So we're going to come down to the part that's talking about the carousel. That's this part here, right? Okay, and I'm going to put in the slides, right? Maybe I'm going to keep it with just two free buttons here, which is the ones at the bottom, those three circles. Okay, but I'm going to put in some images. Okay, so let's put in an image. If you go back to the files that I showed you, they're in the image directory. So there's all these images that you can find that are actually part of the entrepreneurial web page. So let's go to the NUS homepage, our page. Okay, and you can see it also has this sort of plugin that allows you to go left and right. Right. So we want to have something like that effect. It's not going to work perfectly, but we're going to get that same idea. I'm going to type images because that directory is embedded within this one. And I'm going to give it a name, right? So IE 2003_1. Okay. And I can use some alt. So what's this alt tag for? This is to describe what this image is. Okay, that's very important if you're on a you're trying to help someone who doesn't have a browser that has images. Okay, so for example, if you're a blind person who's using a screen reader to read the screen, then obviously they can't say what the image is. right? So you have to provide some text that describes what the image is, the furnace. Okay, and it's also really good to have this because many times, for example, you're loading a web page and it's extremely slow, right? What do you want to see? Nothing there, but maybe it would be better to have a little snippet that says, the furnace.jpg, so at least you know what it is while it's waiting for it to load. Okay. So if I save that and try to reload that page, wherever that page is, I have too many tabs to open. It's always a problem. Okay, so I get one picture here, and if the things are working correctly, then I can scroll it off. I think I need to fix some of the things here. Let's check. Right. Maybe we just need to put some more items in. So let's go do that. So I can insert an image caption. Okay. And now I'm just going to copy this item a couple times. 1, 2. Okay. And I'm going to change it from being active to not being active because, again, only one item can be active at a time. Okay, so you can see there's a caption at the bottom now, right? And I can slide and go to the left and the right, right? So I have the same idea. It's just not properly formatted yet. Okay, so if you try to, for example, not have the JavaScript working, okay, I'm just going to show you this just so that you can understand how to debug your problems. Okay, let's say you commented that out. When you reload the web page, you won't be able to use any of the functionality, a lot of the functionality that comes here. So, for example, the JavaScript is not going to work anymore. So all of the dynamic parts of the web page that are responsive to you won't work. Okay, so that is a function of some of the JavaScript working. Okay, so if you find that once you're creating the web page, you're not sure why it's not working, you can first check whether you actually have the jQuery or the other JavaScript plugins working properly. Okay, because when they are not working properly, you don't get any dynamic parts of the web page, right? So for example, right now you can see this particular arrow here. It's not an arrow. It doesn't show up at all. That's because my fonts haven't been properly installed on this version of Bootstrap yet. Okay, so we've gone through all of the basic parts of the tutorial today. So we've covered, making a simple page, okay, using the examples that Bootstrap provides. The important thing that I think a lot of you are going to need to work with are navigation bars, right? If you have multiple pages, how do you put them appropriately on your page? There are lots of different ways that you can do that in Bootstrap. So you can use navigation bars, you can use navigation pills, you can use tabs. They have tabs as well. Okay. There are other nice things that Bootstrap provides you that I can just briefly highlight that you can think about using in your web page. So one of the things that are very popular are badges, right? So badges are things like this, right? You've seen them all. They're like the number of notifications that you get for something, right? So if your system that you're building is going to send messages or things like that, you can have your system provide a badge in the HTML to be updated, right? Okay. So any questions? Okay, so we're done with mission control today. We have another hour, actually an hour and a half. We have the room until I think 9 o'clock. So those of you who are here with your partners, please stay around and work on your projects. This is a good time for you to do pair programming. You know, okay. Myself, Lee-san, and a couple of the advisors will be around to help answer any questions that you have. Okay. For those of you who are online watching instead, you can post to the Piazza forum, and then we'll try to answer your questions there. Okay. Any other questions? I shouldn't say any other questions. Any questions? You guys are very quiet. Okay. I think you're going to find Bootstrap really useful because it is something that a lot of folks use, and it's one of the most basic things you get asked as a web developer. Okay. Most people will ask you or presume that you have some understanding of Bootstrap, that you've used it for a project before, and when you're getting internships or things like that. Okay, no one's chatted, so I think we're all done.